It's about that time to grab your favorite snack and sit back and relax, because you are now listening to the MovieTime Podcast with your hosts, LOWKEY Geek Rene and Blake the Wolf. Take it away, boys.
Hey, what's up, everybody? It's another episode of Movie Time. Got myself, Rene, LOWKEY Geek here, and Blake the Wolf. What's going on, dude?
Here we are in summertime movie season. We are in the phase after Little Mermaid and Transformers, but before Oppenheimer and Barbie, and that's how I'm doing.
The biggest showdown in summer history since I don't know, I can't remember, but
so we also have the Indiana Joneses and the Mission Impossibles coming up, so
yeah,
it's about to be busy season. And now today we get to do a little bit of like, what have we seen that's maybe not all-time world-ending blockbuster, but the movies that people are gonna go see, like people movies that people go see, old date night stuff. Little heartbreaker, little drama, little comedy action.
Yeah, this is one of those weeks where it's a nice little break from all the madness that we've been going through as far as like movie releases are concerned. And it's definitely the week where I'm pretty sure it's going to be a low box office number week. With The Flash not doing so hot, you got Spider-Verse still killing it in the theaters, right? I actually just rewatched Guardians Volume 3 again last night. In theater, yeah, because I actually treated myself and did that before the other movie that I'm going to talk about. And oh my God, that movie still is so good, even after the second viewing. Still hits you, and it still had a decent crowd still going to it too at my theater that I go to. So I have a feeling the blockbusters are still going to reign supreme, and the movies that we're going to be talking about probably will not. But these are good alternatives
for what they are, for sure. I'm not so sure on one of them. Like I told you earlier, Past Lives is one of the movies we're talking about. We're not going to do any spoilers on it since I haven't seen it yet. But there's times where it'll be like last year, like The Menu, and even to a degree, The Whale. Like they do very well for what they are. Like sometimes these movies can hit $100 million. And I was trying to book a Past Lives ticket. It's in most theaters in New York now, and it was 12 hours before showtime, and there was like 3 seats left. And I was going, holy shit. Like I've been in this stress world of trying to get Barbie and Oppenheimer tickets that are as soon as it's dropped, they're selling out.
Yeah.
So I'm literally doing both on first or second row, just because I'm going to see it early in the best theater. But the fact that Past Lives is doing that kind of business, this will be a successful movie for that type of movie. But it's not going to do the $1 billion shit,
I honestly don't think it'll even do multi-million-dollar stuff, to be honest with you. I think it's because we are in a market where a movie like that, yes, will do well. We are in a location that, yes, that movie will do well. But I don't think it's going to do like multi-million-dollar business. It will do well critical-wise, and it will do well as far as those who go see it, they're going to have high praises for it. But I honestly don't think it's going to be... And it's a movie that does deserve people to watch it. I will say that for now.
It's an A24.
It's an A24.
Also, first off, just to correct the record, it's already made 2.1 mil. So if you said multi-million, that's incorrect.
Yeah, but you're like 100 million, 10 million, all that stuff like that. I wouldn't go that nuts for that.
Sure. Multiple millions. Sure. It may be somewhere between the two. We'll see how it ends up. And then sometimes when a movie like, let's say an indie movie that ends up word of mouthing itself real well, Parasite, or like I remember back in the day, like Little Miss Sunshine felt like an indie release, and the next thing you know, everybody and their mama saw it. Menu made 80 million last year. These kinds of movies, like where it's never going to be in a contention for like the top 20 box offices of the year. Yeah. But for a tiny little indie movie, I always love a little engine that could.
Sure.
And they don't always hit. Sometimes we saw it with like Marcel last year, where it didn't really have legs. where I had little tiny legs, on a little shell.
Tiny legs.
Yeah, cute little tiny legs. Compared to what? But I think these movies will be successful for what they are. And then the other one we're talking about, I'm really curious with J Law's box office flop history and not having a hit for a while after being the #1 box office person, at least like actress people are taking seriously and putting on the movie poster. It's been a minute since she's been there. She had a few flops. So I'm excited to get into those two movies with you before we get into all the Indiana Jones and Mission Impossibles and all that. Apparently some people have seen Oppenheimer and gotten sick because it was so intense. And when I tell you that's what I'm looking for in a movie, I want a movie where they give little airplane bags to you because it is so intense. Like I want to be shaken out of the world I live in and put somewhere else so far. And then we're seeing Guardians of the Galaxy again makes sense. This is the season for that. I want to see it again. I'm seeing Little Mermaid again this weekend. So just do a little rewatch of some of the biggies, and then pretty soon here we won't have the opportunity to see more than 2 movies a week that aren't just major blockbusters. So this is a good little week to get into it before the bomb drops.
Literally and metaphorically. This is, again, and we've mentioned this before, this is one of those summers where it really feels like a summer movie season for the first time in a while. And it's refreshing, but at the same time, because of what we do, it's very daunting because there's a lot of stuff to catch up on. And that's one of the great reasons too why and it's not that I like to brag about it, it's more of a relief when I get to go to a screening, because I get to see it not that week when it comes out, and usually it's a week where there's multiple stuff coming out. So if I have a chance to see it earlier on a day that's like nothing is going on, I'm like, great, I get to knock that off my list so that now I can focus on these other things that I need to watch for that week. And the ability to do that, obviously, it comes with more of the support that we get from you guys watching and listening. So again, I'd like to thank all of you who have supported us. Get the name out there. Just by simply listening, watching, liking, commenting. That's how you spread the word of Movie Time and the LOWKEY GEEK channel and all that. We
for those subscriber numbers, dude.
Yeah,
like there's a reason why it's blowing up. Tell your friends. Apparently, Mr. LOWKEY GEEK here is doing some quality work.
I'm trying. I'm trying to do my and shout out. I just noticed that we got a couple new followers on Spotify as well this past week. So really appreciate again the support that we get either on audio formats or here video wise, even though the podcast Movie Time itself is not full video yet. There will be an opportunity for you guys to show your support if you want to see the full unedited version of the video portion of the podcast on the LOWKEY GEEK channel on YouTube, and I'll talk about that when that is fully rolled out and available.
But I made a promise, and I did off air, but we have to keep to our word. For every 2 Spotify subscribers we get, Renee's going to shave his head. And I don't know. I know that, well, it's kind of stupid because if you're a Spotify subscriber, you can't really see it unless you've got the video pulled up. But Renee, I don't know if you can take a second. I know you've got the headphones on. You want to show what we've been doing.
See,
this is how much we love the fans. This is how dedicated Renee is to his craft. This is how you know he's a professional. The man put his scalp on the line, and here we are.
It has been liberating, but also I terribly miss my long locks that I've been rocking for a very long time, which I'm sure a lot of people who are very familiar with us know that is a complete lie. But there were sections of my head that people didn't see that had strands and strands
very
of
long
hair.
See, he's always facing this way. When you're off camera, it was like a giant, like a ponytail, rat tail kind of thing. But like, it was beautiful, and I miss it. But the nice news is you're more aerodynamic as we get into summer movie season. You're gonna have to be running theater to theater, so now you'll get there just a little bit faster. You get to see all the
definitely.
trailers.
It was comparable to the old kung fu films back in the day, where I had this like the one mega ass long ponytail going on, and it's just been chopping away every time our Spotify numbers grow. So again, thank you all for making that a reality and having Blake's dreams come true of me being completely bald and all that. And I know he loves every minute of it. But with that all being said, and again, great for all of you guys to show your support. Just hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't done so yet, follow if you are on the podcast platforms there. Spread the word. But also if you are on YouTube, comment. Again, it's great conversations that we love having with all of you. It really helps with the community and building a strong and opinionated community in the right way. So
if you are a follower but you want to be like a next level and you see Rene in public, please just follow him around literally and physically. At some point you can go through, if you're a super fan, you're obsessed with Rene like I am, you know what theater he goes to. He's mentioned it before.
I've mentioned it many times.
We're doing some low-key doxing on here.
That's right.
So just wait outside that theater, know that he'll eventually show up, kind of what times he likes to go see these movies, and then follow him around, honestly. If we get the restraining order numbers up, then that'll be good publicity. So I'm 100% serious. This is in no way satire or sarcasm. Please literally follow Rene.
Do it.
In real life. He would love that. And you get the real hot takes in real time.
Absolutely.
Sit next to him in the theater. He loves it when people talk next to him in theaters. Okay, you go, what do you think about this part? It's the best experience. Trust me. Again,
if you are one of the two or those two specific slobs that I talked about during my Little Mermaid viewing, please, by all means, definitely stop me and talk to me and ruin the movie for me. If you are attending a showing at the Kaufman Astoria cinemas there.
And he's planning on going to see the 11 a.m. Barbie.
11 a.m.
Thursday.
That's right. Hell yeah.
So wait there, and then you'll see him go into those doors at that theater he just mentioned.
Hell yeah. I'll be waiting outside. Yeah, until the doors open, and I'll be running to my seat in anticipation for that.
Full speed.
Get
your running shoes on.
All in pink. I'll be all in pink for the pink blowout day that's going to be.
So excited. And you're going to have a blowout because your hair will be grown back by then.
Yeah, exactly. And it'll be pink. I'm going to go ahead and color it pink as well. It's going to be amazing. I'm going to film the whole experience. It'll be great. But before we get into the J-Law of it all, I know you had a chance for some reason to go watch The Flash, which I am actually pretty surprised that you actually decided to go ahead and do it. But I know because it's deep down inside, you love Ezra Miller. You want to support him. You want to give him his kudos and his props. So this which could possibly be one of his last outings for a minute until he fully recovers and recuperates from all the stuff that he's been up to. So as one of the biggest Ezra Miller fans that I know personally, what did you think of The Flash, and why is it your top movie of the year so far?
So to answer your question, as someone who is the president of the Ezra Miller fan club and supports everything he's ever done.
Yes.
No, in seriousness, it's the months of weird, crazy news about Ezra Miller. At first, I thought it was like, oh, this is just a wild thing, a drunken mishap, a mistake. And then it turns out like, oh no, this is pretty real. Not just some like weird TMZ exaggerative headline once you like look into it. I did actually used to be a serious fan. Like his little cameo in Trainwreck to me.
Well, we have to remember that they go by they. Yeah.
First, I'll say I've been doing very little reading about any movies and movie news. And at some point, once the headlines got too real, I just avoided the story. So I apologize. Yeah. I honestly did not mean to misgender Ezra Miller. So their cameo in Trainwreck is like one of my favorite little movie appearances.
That's great. I agree.
So good. And then, it's been a minute, but Perks of Being a Wallflower. All-time favorite, got me through high school books. Yep. So their work there. We need to talk about how I have not seen. We need to talk about Kevin. because that's like an indie movie, but a little too real. So I avoided that one, but now it's on my list of movies to watch. Now it might be even weirder. I don't know. All in all, genuinely fan of the actor's work. And then the news hits, and then we're all thinking, okay, well, they're going to drop Ezra Miller as the Flash. And they did not do that. Instead, they released it in theaters. I know there are some folks who said because Ezra Miller is in the movie, they're not going to go see it.
Right.
And the way I feel about all cancellation things is do what you feel like you need to do. If you're going to boycott something, if you're going to say, hey, that's not for me, instead I'm going to go see it because I have to watch every DC movie no matter what, and I just won't be donating to the Ezra Miller whatever bail fund. I don't know. Like everyone has to draw their own lines on that. I'm not going to give anybody a hard time for it. Personally, I've seen every Marvel movie and now every DC movie in the recent iterations of DC, at least. I was bored out of my mind to the point where the theater, one nice thing about an empty theater is you get to pull out your phone without it bothering anybody. There was only a handful of people there. I sat in a place where I could have my phone out. And at some point, I have a friend, and I was playing Words with Friends with them. And I also play Wordle every night at midnight. So because I saw the late showing, I was playing Wordle, and then I sent them those results because this is a friend. We do both.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was texting them about something, and they're going, wait, I thought you were at the movies. How are you playing Words with Friends, Wordle, and texting during the movie? And I said, oh, don't worry. I'm not missing a fucking thing.
Mm-hmm.
I, fortunately, with whatever little brand of ADHD I got, I can kind of do both. But also, every time I looked up, I go, yep, same fucking movie I thought it would be. Everything was so bland. Were the special effects phenomenal at times? Yes. There was some fun little art direction when dude goes so fast he can actually go backwards in time, which did they do a great job describing the science of it? No. Does the average person going to the movies going to care? No. So sure, just phone that in. If I'm sure there are some people who either can say, no, it actually makes total sense, and here's why. But when Ben Affleck...
Wait, hold on. You're telling me that this movie did not make you want to go out and get a nice bowl of spaghetti and just dive in?
So they do explain it that way later, and I actually did like the visual metaphor. That helps someone like me. It's something that we talked about with Endgame or Infinity War. I think Endgame.
Endgame, yeah.
Where they actually do a visualization.
Yeah,
and I was like, they did it for anyone who is a visual learner. Now you don't have to just like theorize, like, oh, I guess this makes sense. Brilliant. The spaghetti one made sense. But before that happened very early in the movie when Ezra Miller goes, hey, dude, I think I can go backwards in time because I'm so fast forwards. And I'm like, yeah, that's stupid. And Ben Affleck, full sexy GQ, leaning on a car, hoping for like fourth Sexiest People Magazine Sexiest Man of the Year award pose. He goes, well, I don't remember the exact line now. I had it a second ago. But essentially he's doing the like, it's a bad idea. And because if you change just one blade of grass, that could change everything. And Ezra Miller goes, oh, yeah, like butterfly effect. He goes, yeah, like butterfly effect. And they're being fully serious, talking about when Ezra Miller is saying he can travel the speed of light and therefore go backwards in time. Batman Ben Affleck goes, yep, but should ya? And I'm like, wait, that's all we're getting until like an hour later when we have another Batman talking about spaghetti theory. Sure, that was great. And they were like, we're not doing the Marvel version of time travel. We're doing the spaghetti theory. Of course, I'm with it. I'm so stupid and dense. I'm like, yeah, that makes sense to me. But when Ben Affleck's like, yeah, of course you can. And then he says, but if you change just one blade of grass, that could change everything. And then Ezra Miller goes, wait, what if I went back in time and didn't change anything? And in my head, I'm like, well, there's like one way to do that, but you can't even step on the grass. You can't have shoes that leave tread. Like there's essentially no way. But if you could, what you got to do is you got to go add a can of tomato soup in the kitchen when no one's home, and then not interact with anyone, no animals see you, no people, etc. If only inanimate universe sees you and you are it is undisturbed, maybe you get away with it. Instead, he goes to the fucking grocery store and talks to his mom, and it's like, yeah, that was fine, right? What? Anyway, after that point, I was like, this is fucking stupid. I know he's an excitable, nervous energy kid, and it's part of the charm of the Ezra Miller verse or whatever. But at that point, I was like, okay, we don't care apparently about the stakes of this movie. We have a double Ezra Miller. That was fun. We get some weird, you get to rewatch the same action scene. I actually usually like that when they do it in movies.
Mm-hmm.
We've seen it with Twilight and the Tom Cruise movie, Eat, Pray, Love, Die, Control, Repeat, whatever that was called. Live, Die, Repeat something.
Live,
anyway,
Die, Repeat. Yeah.
Sure, who cares?
Hey, that movie was great.
At the end of the day, it felt very Fast X, where I actually liked it. You're right. It was very Fast X, Fast 10, Fast Roman numeral 10, the new Fast and Furiousist movie. I was just like, yeah, this is a bunch of just empty calories. I'm not invested. I don't care. And apparently in the DC world, certain people can show up. They can change bodies. We can go back in time. And I thought what would have been smart is if it was a send up of the multiverse concept. At some point, I thought we were going to get there to where they're going to actually James Gunn cuck Marvel and be like, oh, you're doing too much multiverse. We're going to do the opposite. And in a way, maybe this is the end of whatever multiverse thing's going on with DC, and they've got a new phase coming. There's a version where this movie, they'd already made it. There was the Ezra Miller problem, and they wanted to pivot away from going full multiverse with it or something. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure the long-term ramifications of this movie, if there are any, kind of like we were talking about with Guardians. Like, is there a Guardians 4 apparently, but it won't be James Gunn, and what's the future of the Marvel universe? At this point, I'm pretty checked out on both. I'm going to keep seeing the movies, I feel like probably indefinitely, but I am no longer invested in the characters, especially when in the same movie they're changing bodies and we have multiple time travel theories, and it's essentially like special effects appetizer sampler of various plot lines, and we're not breaking new ground. And there were also enough times where I was either bored, knew exactly what was about to happen, or there's times where the special effects were pretty whack. There's times, the first time he goes into the flash speed, whatever, I was like, this is the best you all can do with the long amount of time you've had planning this movie. And it was like lightning shooting out, and it's unclear. The movie I was hoping that it would be, the thing I was hoping it'd be most similar to was in X-Men. I want to say First Class. It may have been right after that, but it's where the dude goes full speed and everything is slow-mo. Quicksilver. That to me, one of the best super fast guy scenes I've ever seen and maybe ever will see. And I thought the Flash would be spending more time doing that. This was not nearly as entertaining or as exciting as it could have been. I was pretty bored, and I'm pretty sure part of the reason the box office is suffering, folks like you and I who go out and see it opening weekend, I missed it opening weekend, but saw it within a week or so. I'm not recommending this movie to fucking anybody. I'm not going to go, oh yeah, you've been skeptical, but this one is special. That's happened with a lot of Marvel movies over time. Somebody gets in the MCU because eventually someone goes, hey, I know you're not a Marvel person. You got to see this one. This is, I don't think anybody's really going to recommend it unless someone was already going to see it anyway. So at the end of the day, I'm going to pan the Flash because it was a flash in the pan.
Nice. You're definitely the first one I heard use that phrase for this movie.
Wait, I'm not kidding. Really?
No,
because I just came up with it on the flight. No, I when I said it, I was like, that's probably something a lot of people are saying, but
no,
clever for
even I used it in I think the description of my review of the video.
I should probably subscribe to your channel after that recommendation.
I'm not surprised one bit that you didn't like this movie at all. I actually, I think at one point I wanted to tell you just don't even bother, but
that's bad.
I myself
see about everything, and if you're telling me that means like really don't bother.
Yeah, because again, I know that when it comes to like these like superhero comic book movies and all that, you like to watch them for spectacle reasons and not so much for story or depth or whatever the case is.
Right.
And now, especially with the DC, the world, the universe that they are working towards now, they're trying to close out everything so that the new regime can take over and do whatever they need to do. So it's one of those questions, and I think we asked ourselves this question before when Shazam came out. It's like, is it even necessary to watch Shazam, knowing that this dude is just not gonna be involved in anything in the future later on down the line? And then when you found that out, you're just like, well, what the fuck was the point in me watching this movie, you know? And I feel like this is another movie that is, it basically is like that. However, for myself, I think as someone who somewhat enjoyed the Zack Snyder version of the DC universe, I thought this was a great send-off and closure to that, because it definitely closed it off for me, especially with the way the movie ended. And, you know, at this point, I think whoever's listening and watching at this point doesn't really care, because box office shows who cared showed up already. And who didn't, which is the majority of you, decided to stay home. So at the end of the movie, with the Flash doing what he did, never really learned his lesson, still tried to meddle around with the past to hopefully get his dad, you know, out of jail. He finds himself not in the original timeline that he was already in, and still is in a multiverse timeline. So with all that being said, Flash is gone. The Flash that we know is not going to be in the new DCU moving forward. Now, a lot of people are going to be saying, well, what about Aquaman? Because he has a movie coming out later this year. What about him? Well, they kind of explained that too, where in the post-credit scene, they basically, you know, Flash is hanging out with Aquaman and says, hey, you know, everywhere I go, there's a Batman, but they're all different Batman, but you always seem to remain the same. Haha, clever way to say, oh, so technically the Aquaman we're going to see later this year may already not be in the universe that we thought he was going to be in, you know? So there's an easy out for DC to be like, every movie that's coming out now, with the exception of Blue Beetle, which they're saying is now part of the new DCU, is not in the main universe that they're working on. Blah, 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 all this kind of bullshit, whatever. So I can totally understand why no one is invested in this anymore. That being said, I enjoyed the movie. I found it to be extremely entertaining. I loved a lot about it. Was it a perfect movie? No. Was it what a lot of critics were saying, the greatest movie of all time, like greatest superhero movie of all time? Tom Cruise saying like, oh my God, I've never seen a superhero movie like this before. James Gunn even saying it's one of the best comic book movies he's ever seen. I think a lot of that is all like fluff and BS. That, or I don't know, they gave Tom Cruise a good amount of money to help with the PR for this movie. And I totally think it backfired, because everyone's probably like, I don't buy that bullshit, you know, or there's a lot of people. Yeah, go ahead.
The word of mouth hurts when you get people hyped about it and then they're disappointed. Yeah. And then they're not going to go back to everyone and be like, oh, it was actually amazing. And so then you go, not that good. Yeah. That's the problem with expectations, is maybe they got an injection of juice into that opening box office weekend. Yeah. But that doesn't make it sustainable.
No. And I think what they did too, marketing wise, they made a big mistake here. And I think they were also tied. One, they weren't doing regular press because of the whole Ezra Miller situation. They were afraid that questions were going to come up about Ezra Miller. And if you're Michael Keaton returning to a role that you were known for back in '89, is the question of Ezra Miller the kind of question you want to get? Or do you want to get those questions like, oh my God, it's been X amount of years since you've donned the cowl and the cape. How do you feel? How was it? Blah, blah, blah. No, they're going to get questions like, so how was it like working with Ezra Miller? Did you notice like any weirdness going on with them, with them and all that kind of stuff like that? Like, you know, so they avoided the typical press, which I'm sure hurt a little bit. And I've never seen a movie do so many fan screenings 2 weeks prior to the original release of the movie. Like here in New York, I counted 4 or 5 different fan screenings of this movie. Those are the people that are going to go out and watch this movie. They were going to pay for this movie. If now they're getting to see the movie for free, you're losing money, you know? And if they saw it and didn't like it, you just lost repeat money too. So I don't know. I think they were just throwing a lot of, darts on the board and hoping that this movie was going to do well, and whatever the case is. But I will say this. I did like the way Andy Muschietti directed the movie. I think he does have a good vision for this type of stuff. And I know it looks like they're giving him a second chance with the new Batman, or a new Batman movie that they're working on. So I would like to see what would happen with a movie that he directs that has no controversy attached to it. Because I felt like he was kind of put like against the wall on this one, and he had nothing to do or no control over the madness that ensued and all. But it is what it is. And I'm sure, there are a lot of people who are like me, and there are a lot of people who are like you. And it's hard for me to recommend a movie like this because of knowing how a lot of people feel about it. I'll just say this. If you liked any of the DC movies under Zack Snyder's tenure, then this may be worth watching because it is a nice closure to that. If you were 50-50, don't bother, because if you don't see it, you're not going to miss out on anything. It's not going to help further explain anything. If you are a Flash fan and you are jonesing because the CW Flash just ended their run and they're done for, that's it, zilch, you may like this movie. But if you like that Flash on TV, you're going to hate this Flash, because this Flash is completely a different personality from that, And so I don't know. It's a weird kind of situation that they find themselves in, but I enjoyed it. I thought it was a fun time. But that's why I guess I'm happy that I saw it in a screening with a bunch of fans. And then I rewatched it that weekend, just normal. And the amount of noise that happened during the screening compared to the lack of noise in a regular showing, I was just like, wow, this is painful. The only audible sounds I heard from the crowd during the normal screening on that weekend was when they were doing the whole thing at the end, where it was like, all of a sudden we're turning this into a tribute of DC within Warner Brothers for the last 100 years and all that, which I thought was kind of cool and kind of cute. That's the biggest pop I heard from people, when and again, spoilers, hey, you knew at this point
you would have already seen it. You would have already seen the Flash. Do you care? I laughed out loud when Nicolas Cage popped on the screen, and I texted you afterward, and you explained why that meant something, and I was like, it still felt fucking stupid.
Yeah.
If you're gonna do a tribute, maybe do better and make it look not stupid. Yeah. That's one option, and not just like a very 3D Nicolas Cage rendering.
Now I did hear he did help film for that. So I think
I honestly believe that.
Yeah.
But that didn't mean it didn't look fucking stupid.
It looked all CG. It looked really, really bad.
Nicolas Cage also has looked CG since the mid-90s.
He really has. It's so true. Yeah.
Very elastic, we'll say.
Yeah, very, very true.
I'm talking about surgery. I'm talking about literally his actual face.
Yeah, very, very true.
Maybe since Face Off, they just did too much. You because he was method acting for that movie. You can only take someone's face off and then put it back on so many times before wear and tear and readjusting all that stuff like that. Kind of like the guy from Guardians of the Galaxy, like peeled back face and all that stuff. So it was that particular moment that got the biggest pop from the crowd. And it was I laughed a lot, honestly, during the movie. I did laugh a handful of times out loud, which is good even for a comedy.
Yeah.
That said, it's Ezra Miller's timing, and it's that millennial sense of humor that is basically written for me. Pretty sure there's gonna be a lot of people in any screening who are like, this dude's annoying. Yeah. That sense of humor is essentially my wheelhouse, and I laughed maybe 4 or 5 times. Yeah. It got a little chuckle. Yeah. But then all the things around that didn't feel like, oh yeah, that was really good, and it made me laugh. It was like, okay, yeah, it made me laugh a few times, but it felt like a fucking waste of time.
Yeah. Well, Sorry you had that experience, but at least you know what the deal is with that movie. And all I'm so curious to those of you listening and watching, what your thoughts were, or if you didn't see it, are you really happy you didn't see it? Like you're like, oh, thank God I checked this off my list. And I'm like, nope, not gonna do it. Don't give a shit. Don't need to do it and all that. I definitely would love to hear about that. Speaking of
also
go ahead.
if you could put which canceled actor you think should take over the role for the Flash in future productions. Rene will put a list out of just the worst people.
I'll do a poll.
That'd be great. And just people who have done heinous crimes against other people. And if you think that they should be hired to play the Flash in the next multiverse, whatever, then definitely feel free to throw that in the comments and why. Don't maybe be cool about that. Actually, maybe that was a terrible idea. Maybe
I like it.
Maybe DC should stop hiring sex pests. I don't know.
I like it.
Just an idea. Sorry, alleged sex pests. I don't know where we stand legally, but if you want to not lose your lunch, maybe don't read those articles.
Well, it's okay, but at least now DC and Marvel have a competition for another reason, where how many of their stars can be in the news for some illegal activities or some domestic violence cases and all that. Because I feel like as of this time, as of the recording of this, Marvel has a leg up, because not only do they have Jonathan Majors in the hot seat, but the guy who played Namor in Black Panther was just recently accused of sexual assault that he's denying right now. So that's two for one. Two versus one right there.
Now I'm thinking, boy. Now I'm thinking maybe we switch to covering the NFL or something where there isn't the same. Or sorry, wait, no. Politicians. Wait, no.
No.
Religious
podcasters,
groups. No.
Podcasters have no problems, right? YouTubers have no problems.
I'm trying to think of an industry right now that it's pretty fucked. Okay. Well,
food service industry.
I literally can't keep going down this road with you.
All right. So let's switch
I'm
topics.
so glad that I gave them my money. Thank goodness.
There
Definitely,
you go.
Let's talk about simpler times and past lives.
Yes. Dude, brilliant segment, because that was actually
segue. But yeah,
where I wanted to go with that for sure. So past lives. So this is a movie that's been on my radar for months now. I've heard a lot of buzz about it. I believe they showed it. It was either Sundance or Cannes. I'm not sure. Cannes, however you want to pronounce it. Wherever you are from in the country.
Like Cannes, damn
Cannes.
It. Where I drink my beer, what I like.
I drink my beer in cans when I was in Cannes. But word of mouth and what I've been reading is that this movie is something to look out for. It's going to probably be one of the best of the year. And again, A24, if you know us by now, we are A24 stans. We bleed by the altar that is A24. And anything A24 does, we're usually 100% behind it. So
my A24 socks, but I'm not showing my feet because that's all paywalled. So
that
go
is
over to onlyfans.com/Blake feet.
Blake feet.
Don't actually go there. I don't know what's there. Never mind. Don't.
That might be a whole different other thing that you're bringing.
Yeah, never mind. But yeah, I definitely do have A24 socks that you will not be seeing.
Nice.
Today.
I love it. I love it. So it has been showing in New York, but very limitedly. I think 1 or 2 theaters only had it for like 3 weeks or so. But now, this week, it's finally spread out more. And I finally had a chance to see it last night. After watching Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 for a second time, which is great. And then now getting into this, I think I wish I could do the opposite. Because
I was going to say, you need a palate cleanser.
Yeah, because...
Real quick, though, we're not doing spoilers because I haven't seen Past Lives yet.
Yeah,
My plan is to see it this weekend.
Yeah.
We can talk about it a little more down the road, especially a lot of people in other cities haven't gotten a chance to see it at
Absolutely.
all.
Yeah.
People are complaining like, hey, everyone's talking about this movie. When can I see it?
Yeah.
But the reason why I wanted to bring it up and why I was segueing over there is I do want to hear, I'm a little nervous going into this movie. how devastating is it?
Sure.
Without, I don't want you to say anything with even how it ends, or like, oh, it ends this way, but it starts with, like, nothing, not even that deep. But like, how would you recommend it to someone? Would you recommend it to everyone? Would you be like, hey, maybe just bring some tissues? Like, what are we talking?
Sure.
It looks pretty real.
Yeah.
Like maybe the most devastating movie ever, or maybe just like a little lighthearted romance. I honestly can't tell.
Yeah. Lighthearted, this is not. I'll say that right now. Okay. Definitely not lighthearted one bit. What you said about it being real, I felt like this was a very personal movie. Like it felt completely real. I feel like if you polled 10 people on the street, 9 out of 10 probably can relate to this movie. If you've ever been in a failed long distance relationship, if you've ever been if you ever had a situation where unrealized love took place, this will gut you by the end of the movie. I was gutted when this movie ended. Now, but I didn't feel that way.
Ask you to not do this. I'm gonna go on mute real quick.
But I didn't tell you why. I didn't tell you why though. And
I know it could be one way or the other.
Yeah, or, I didn't tell you why.
I honestly do like it when romance movies do that. Where it's like, oh, you thought you wanted that and you didn't, or you did get that, or you didn't get that. But I'm going to go off for a second, just because. But you're going to talk about it for a sec.
Yeah, I'll wave my hands and I'll let you know when I'm done. Okay. But yeah, again, it's one of those types of films where, you know, I like a good romance every now and then, but I'm not a fan of those like rom-coms or those fluffy romance movies that we tend to get these days. Like, I like movies that challenge realness and challenge people, challenge real experiences. And I do feel like this is a movie that was written either by real experience or by observation, because this is a movie that I think anyone can relate to, especially with the situations that I've described. The acting was brilliant all throughout. Greta Lee, huge shout out to her because she was phenomenal in this film. I can also see how a lot of people will not like her character too. And again, I won't describe why that is, but I have to also say, for a first-time director of Celine Song, this being her first movie, brilliant job. I mean, a phenomenal job. I can't wait to see what else she has in store for us, the movie viewing audience, because being able to tell such a heartfelt, personal story using New York City as a nice backdrop to all that, I think that was a brilliant choice, and it just felt right, and it felt really good. It was very moving. Like I said, I felt gutted at the end of it. It was, I guess, if someone was to ask me, well, what kind of movie would you compare it to? I am afraid to say what I want to compare it to because it might throw things off or it might hint too much on it. But there is a certain movie that once Blake has a chance to see it, I'm going to ask him if he feels this way. He may already know because they actually even mentioned this movie in the movie itself. So it kind of prepares you already as to what to expect when you're watching this. So if you fall into any of those categories that I've mentioned before, this is a movie that you should probably watch because you could totally relate. But it will hit you, and it would hit you extremely, extremely hard. That being said, I cried 3 times in this movie. There are 2 moments that happened throughout the movie. And then when the ending happened, it wasn't that immediate thing, but then something happened and then bam, got me. It's as if someone was in the aisle waiting for that moment, walked over to my seat and decided to punch me right in the face. And then that's when I started bawling for sure. So yeah, wave my hands. That's all I'm going to say about this movie. Waving, hopefully he sees that. There we go. Okay, cool. Yeah, so that's it. But yeah, I highly recommend this movie, especially if you're a romantic at heart. And primarily if you've experienced any one of those things I mentioned before, then this is a movie that's definitely going to tug on your heartstrings for sure.
Love is easy and never hurts ever. So maybe I'll skip it. We'll see.
Yeah, I definitely, I will say this: if you are in a mood, if you are like in like a depressed mood, or if you're having a bad day, do not watch this movie. Please
Or
do
do what I
yourself
do
a
and go
favor.
purge it at the theater, weep your eyes out, and be like, "Oh, I can survive it." Like, I'm not even entirely kidding. There's times where I will outsource my emotions to movies, and then
Yeah,
it's there on the screen and not in me. And then like the credits roll. Trust me, stay through the end of the credits, and then go like, and then that way you processed it in a
yeah,
safe space and not staring at a wall in your home, rocking yourself to sleep. Not that that's ever happened to me.
yeah.
Just saying,
No,
if you are someone who has ever experienced sadness, then maybe
yeah.
that's an option for you.
In like in all the movies that I watch, I always stay through the credits just to pay respect to the filmmakers and those involved.
Oh,
Like I do that all the
they
time.
are very grateful. They're always like, "Oh, wow, that guy must have seen my." No, in seriousness,
Yeah,
it kills me when they do an official screening of something and they cut the
the credits.
credits
Yeah, I
early.
know. Yeah,
Like, especially if it's like a rooftop screening or a
yeah.
drive-in. I'm like,
I hate that.
if they
Yeah,
have to get to the Q&A, like, we got it, okay,
yeah,
maybe, but it is part of the movie.
yeah,
We have a theater etiquette thing we'll get to. We have an
yeah,
episode
yeah.
in the once
Absolutely.
summer movie slows down a little bit, we can get to
Yeah.
that. But in the meantime, we do have a movie that people are curious about, Renee.
No, for sure. But before we get into that, I will say, just to close the conversation off, like again, I stay through credits usually for the respect of the makers and all that. This is one of those moments where I stay through the credits also, and it helped me recuperate because
Yeah.
it was like just one of those things. Now, there was only one showing yesterday at the theater I went to. It was a nighttime showing. That's why I couldn't do the opposite, because that's really what I was hoping to do.
Yep.
Um, I counted 10 other people in the theater with me. Not a dry eye walking out. Like I heard the sniffling, I saw like the tissue and all that stuff like that. Not a dry eye. So again, get ready if you're planning to watch this movie for sure. It is definitely going to be one of those. But enough of this crying and sad bullshit romance. Come on, get the fuck out of here. Let's talk about some R-rated comedy goodness. Let's talk about Jennifer Lawrence.
Jennifer Lawrence dating a recent high school grad.
Hell yeah.
32
Let's talk
years
about
for what,
raunchy
19?
and wrong messaging. He was like 19, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And she's like 30, what, 32, 30,
I think
36
so.
or something
Off
like
the
that.
math I did. Yeah.
Yeah.
32 to 19.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's very relatable today. I mean, I feel like that happens all the time. So, let's talk about this R-rated comedy. I will say this. I'm going to throw it off to you first. But I want to start off by saying, when it comes to R-rated comedies, there was definitely a moment in cinema where R-rated comedies used to rule the box office. You go back to like 2000s, late 99, like late 90s, early
Will
2000s.
Ferrell,
Oh my God.
Hangover,
So
all of that.
much.
Even
Yeah.
there was the era before Will Ferrell in them, and Adam Sandler stuff.
Yeah.
This was a thing where, and then and then Judd Apatow kind of like caps the genre
Yep.
off,
Mm-hmm.
where it goes from the Will Ferrell and Anchorman to then full Judd Apatow season, and then
Yeah.
it's almost like it saw the end of its road.
Absolutely.
Because they did full Best Picture worthy, laughing, crying, the whole thing.
Yeah.
And here we are with rom-coms, which this isn't really a rom-com, but we can talk. We'll get into it, but it hits a couple different genres, including the R-rated comedy you're talking about.
Yeah.
Now they've done so many deviations of it, where it's like a Booksmart or what's the other movie that this guy did? Which, speaking of which, not to get back into past lives, but that was their debut.
Yeah, The Good Boys.
Right.
Yeah.
This other dude, the dude who did this movie. Sorry, what's this movie called? It has the name.
No Hard Feelings. No Hard Feelings.
No Hard Feelings. I literally have looked it up a few times. But Good Boys is another one where they're doing like variations on it. Like, what if it was an R-rated comedy but with kids, or a teacher, or whatever?
Yeah.
This is a new little twist on it, but it felt vintage, honestly.
Absolutely.
It felt Harold and Maude in some ways.
Yeah.
We don't. Sorry, I interrupted. You were gonna let me go first, but go first before I went first, please.
Yeah. So again, just to go back, I mean, we had the Farrellies with their line of comedy that kind of really broke the ground with like the R-rated comedy and all that. Then we had the Ferrells, like the Will Ferrells, the Adam Sandlers. Then we had the Judd Apatows, and then I would say the last true good R-rated comedy we got was Bridesmaids. With like the
Mm,
Paul Feig's, like Paul Feig, like doing his like take on that stuff, and then it's kind of been like a mishmash for a while. It's just like a lot of hits, a lot of misses, not a lot of hits, kind of thing. I feel like they've been trying to reinvent that wheel. That's why a movie like this, it felt refreshing because it felt familiar. It felt like
mm.
going back to that period when this type of comedy was like ruling the box office. So that's one thing that I really appreciated. And it's hard to do also too because that period, I feel like the social feeling wasn't as woke as it is now. So you can't get away with a lot of the stuff that they would poke fun at before. So I felt appreciative that they at least tried to kind of like go somewhere where it was like a little controversial, right? So that being said, I don't know how much of the movie you knew going into it as before you watched it, but what were your
Nothing.
initial thoughts, and how did you feel about J Law jumping into this genre that she's never done before?
So there's a moment where she's kind of top of the heap on leading actresses and on movie posters. I'm thinking of the Silver Linings Playbook era J
Yep.
Law.
Yep. Hmm.
She was also I mean, Hunger Games, obviously, and she gets to do the thing where more of a Robert Pattinson move, where she's the head of this young adult
Hmm.
franchise, and not as much the Daniel Radcliffe thing, where she just goes from young adult franchise to weirdo stuff and art house
Like
stuff.
we art house indie stuff. Yeah.
She gets pulled by some great directors, David O. Russell, American Hustle, Joy, and Silver Linings Playbook, which, his career has gone a different way since then after the Christian Bale movie. I think maybe I'm just tired today after going through it with The Flash and then seeing this movie last night late. What was the movie? It was literally last year. We were so excited about it. The World
Don't
War
look up.
One Christian Bale. Nope.
Oh.
Christian Bale. Denzel Washington, John David Washington.
Oh.
This
Shoot.
is so
Babylon.
fun.
I no.
I know that's what I did too in my head.
Amsterdam.
Oh my gosh.
Amsterdam.
Amsterdam. Yeah, another big city name.
Yeah.
So sorry. David O. Russell's career goes there. Don't Look Up. She is in Don't Look Up. And
Yeah.
then that's kind of the most recent talking about the Adam McKay R-rated comedy stuff of who did direct Anchorman, but also then
Hmm.
goes on and does Big Short. Danny Boyle's Mother, a favorite of mine, even though a really wild movie. So her career is kind of all over the place, but she's at some point doing Hunger Games and X-Men,
Yeah.
being a big star of both franchises. X-Men's kind of falling off by the end of her tenure there. But she has a solid career. I almost forgot she was in Savages.
Hmm.
Also, the at least I wait, was she in Oliver Stone Savages? Because she's showing up on the list of cast, but Google does that to me sometimes. No, sorry, she was originally cast. I hate it when Google does that. Google a movie, someone's like Jennifer Lawrence movies, and that shows up because it shows up in Google results. Anyway, apparently she at one point was pulled to do the Oliver Stone movie. What a hell of a legendary director. But she falls off, like all the way off. Passengers, huge flop. It's kind of the end of her and Chris Pratt's. They can be in anything and they'll sell tickets to it. Red Sparrow did not do very well,
Yeah.
critically or box office, if I recall. She was in Causeway last year, which gets Brian Tyree Henry an Oscar nomination.
Yep.
But what's interesting is when you're that big and then you have some flops, you kind of have to pivot a little bit. Some people do the Daniel Radcliffe, only the indie movies. Some people put themselves like they'll literally humiliate themselves in a comedy and kind of set the level, set their career that way. Like a Nicolas Cage has done that, where he literally just gets dunked on for a whole movie, and is sometimes they'll do. The movie I'm thinking of is Tropic Thunder, when this is silly, but it's a fictional movie, but Ben Stiller's character goes through that where he has the huge flop where he plays Jack and then is trying to like they try to go too seriously so that people take themselves seriously in a movie. Or another fictional one, Chris Rock's character in Top 5. Fully recommended. If you want a rom-com, not enough people saw Top 5. Been a big fave. Great stay-at-home date night movie. But his character is not taken seriously, kind of the Adam Sandler vein. And then he tries to make a movie where it's a slave rebellion movie, and he's the lead of the Haitian slave rebellion, and it just gets panned. You have a lot of options on what you can do when your career isn't doing what it was. I think this is a kind of interesting move for her. Go ahead.
Well, remember, she knew that. That's why she took a break from acting for a while. She initiated a break in herself because she knew something was wrong. She knew like things weren't going right. So I believe her first time back was Don't Look Up. That was like the first role she came back with, and then she did Causeway. So I feel like she kind of like re-centered herself and like, all right, now I think I'm ready to kind of focus more. So yeah, a very interesting trajectory to this point, with her career.
This is definitely a move though, and I think there's a version of her career where she's just doing the Julia Roberts, Sandra Bullock rom-com-y stuff and getting just paycheck after paycheck that way. Like you can see her as a Meg Ryan type if in a
good call.
Certain world.
Yeah.
This is not a traditional rom-com, but it had those vibes. It's more Harold and Maude. It's more these people aren't going to be together, and it also it reminded me of some of those 90s movies where the jock took a bet and dated the nerd, but then they fell for them kind of thing. I don't want to get into spoilers yet on how all that goes, but at the end of the day, this felt vintage. I enjoyed it. I actually laughed way more than I thought I would. I was kind of cringing my way into the theater and getting the ticket and being like, well, it's either this or Past Lives, and I don't have it in me to see Past Lives tonight. So same with The Flash. It's been a rough week, and so both nights I was like, I'm just going to want to watch something that's going to kind of just be more escapist rather than art house skullfuck material, A24 material. It worked for me in that regard. I honestly had a nice time. I'll recommend it to people who want an easy movie, a decent laugh, who aren't, full cinephiles. If it doesn't have Kino Lorber or Criterion Promise, then I don't want to go see it, whatever. I think general audiences are going to enjoy themselves. It does play with some of the R-rated comedy, it goes blue at multiple points. They do that. I can't believe they just did that moments, and it has some really cute moments. This isn't a spoiler, but it is near the end. The dog at the end has a little moment. Honestly, it got me. It was like when I was like, oh. I had my heartstrings just got a little plucked at the end.
Yeah.
That's so sweet.
Yeah.
I had a really nice time overall. There's not a lot to theorize about this movie or to get into. We can talk about J-Law's career, which we've gotten into. We can talk about the trajectory of these movies. It's kind of interesting to me that it wasn't we know that she can get cast by big directors, but maybe the studios aren't putting her in the lead on their big movies the way that they used to. So, but I could have seen her in the lead of a Judd Apatow, Adam McKay, which she did Don't Look Up. But I mean, like more of that style. Like if Seth Rogen and Evan Goldberg, who wrote Superbad, right, and a bunch of those other movies, were going to make a movie, I could see her doing that version. And this was more of a off-brand version of those kind of movies. But that made it, in a way, like less threatening. It was a very simple, but took some risks and did a lot. Like it did comedy and some drama. It was a little all over the place, but it was also very palatable. I don't imagine too many people, unless you're offended by curse words or sex talk in an R-rated comedy. Unless you're those folks, it'll go down really smoothly. That might be a good, I think, just to cap off about her career, I think that's a good move for her. It's just a very enjoyable movie. The other kind of movie it reminded me of was the David O. Russell stuff she was doing, that when she really blows up and is full red carpet winning multiple Oscars, which can you remember that? Like she's the interview darling of the year. Everyone's going, oh my gosh, J-Law is me. She gets me. The memes and the little clips being shared online. before TikTok was around. She's literally a multi-Oscar winner, or at least multi-Oscar nominee. If I don't know if you have that on deck, but it reminded me of the sorry, I said David O. Russell. It's kind of in the vein of a Silver Linings Playbook, where it's a romantic dramedy, but also it reminded me of another movie she was in that was a big flop and kind of the mark of the end of Alexander Payne's run, where he still has had decent movies since then, and I'm sure will again.
Mm-hmm.
But do you remember Aloha?
Oh yeah, I remember that.
Like very panned.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Big flop. Like this is going towards like
a lot of controversy behind that movie too. I think when that came out.
Yeah. And this dude did Sideways, and after that just had blank checks. And he did Descendants, which wasn't as good. And then actually, now I might be way wrong. Sorry, I feel like I keep having really good takes and word things well. Was she? She was in Aloha, right? Who directed Aloha? I really thought that was Alexander Payne up until I looked it up just now. Sorry, Cameron Crowe. Holy shit.
Yeah, we're learning that Blake knows nothing about movies now. He never knew anything about anything.
So if you'd asked me 10 minutes ago, I really would have thought that was Alexander Payne. But now that this is another type of movie and that same style of director, where I think there's a Venn diagram where Cameron Crowe, Alexander Payne, and David O. Russell are all kind of in the same wheelhouse at times. And their best movies are very unique and distinct. But then they have other movies where it's just like give the difference between like the tone of Aloha and Downsizing. And some of David O. Russell's movies, namely her stuff with him, like Silver Linings Playbook or Joy. Elizabethtown is also like a bit of a dramedy, like romantic dramedy. They're just doing. It feels kind of like those 90s. We used to make indie movies from big directors, and they were famous, and they had superstars in them, and we don't really do that anymore. Mm-hmm. For the most part now, things have gotten so franchised. There is way less budget for, hey, I have an idea about a man and a woman meet and they have adventures and it's kind of funny and kind of sad and it's kind of cute. And like the rom-com genre is all but dead. The R-rated comedies are all but dead, especially compared to their heyday. Yeah. I think that's part of why the movie felt vintage. And is it the best of those genres? No, but if this was made by any of those directors I mentioned, it wouldn't be their worst movie. It's kind of like just a middle of the road, very palatable. I could see any given audience giving it a pretty high score and word of mouthing it, at least to where it's making its money back and maybe then some. I'm curious how the reactions are as this movie gets released, since it's just now out this weekend.
Yeah, no, for sure. Refreshing. That's how I felt about this movie when I saw it. It was extremely refreshing because, like you said, we don't get to see movies like this anymore. And especially with such a top talent that J-Law is, that's, she carved out for herself. Because you're right. Like, there was a moment where it got to the point where I think we had the conversation is she around too much? Like, I felt like she was being kind of like that darling that Hollywood was definitely doing their best to shove down everyone's throats because she was everywhere. And I think that's one of the reasons, too, why people started falling in love with her, because she felt it. And when it came to interviews and questions, she was raw. She was serious. She was being herself. She wasn't doing like the whole sweet, like pre-penned responses or whatever the case is. She spoke her mind. And
it's good for that millennial era who's tired of the bullshit and of being sold, the studio system version of, here's a perfect movie star.
Yep.
She was off the cuff and real.
And which was great. And again, also refreshing. But I think it also got to the point where it was too much for her. And I think she felt it, and that's why she took that break. Now seeing her come back, I'm actually so happy to see the choices that she's making, because now I feel like these are more personal choices and she's working with people that she really wants to work with, as opposed to getting jobs for people that want her. I feel like she's now choosing who she wants to work with. And I just recently watched, she did an episode of Hot Ones, which is a great interview show. Like, yeah, the whole Hot Wings things is great, but it's the interview that I really love.
Yeah.
And she basically says that the reason why she did a movie like this is because she knows the director. She's known the director for a while, Gene Stupnitsky. And it was Gene that kind of like talked to her and said, "Hey, I kind of have an idea about this movie." And he wrote the script out and showed it to her, and she's like, "Let's fucking do this. Like, I want to do this. This is pretty fucking hilarious." And she kind of just put herself in it, and, obviously they worked together and that made it happen. And I like people who take the initiative and kind of control of their career in that sense, especially for someone who at one point fell into the Hollywood kind of supply chain system where it's just like, oh, this is a fresh new face and this is who they're really going to try to push out there. We've seen it happen so many times, sometimes to success, sometimes to failures, where there's a lot of people that we've seen them trying to push that we no longer hear from now these days. Like what happened to that dude or what happened to that girl, that lady, all that stuff, so it's nice to see that happening. The movie itself was, I was like you. I was shocked how much I laughed throughout. Like, it was really funny in a lot of moments. And I think it's also because, again, it reminded me of that era of R-rated comedy that I was like, wow, I haven't seen a movie like this in a long time. And the crowd that I was with felt the same way. Like, everyone was dying at the right moments and all that. Were there some cringe moments? Absolutely. There are some moments where I was just like, ooh, I don't know. Do we really want to go that route right now? And there was some like questionable moments too, where I was just like, I don't know if this is funny or if this is weird. And I felt that way like during the beach scene.
I was going to say the fight scene on the beach.
Yeah.
It's something to do where another point, if we're talking about J-Law's career arc, the what they call it, the fappening, is that what it was actually called? That's wild.
That's what they called it.
That's just what society was like. Yeah, we're gonna call it that.
Yeah.
She's part of a giant nude leak of somebody hacked into a bunch of celebrities' accounts, and her stuff gets leaked. And I was literally like quoting this moment to someone recently, talking about how you can respond. Not that this person was going through, but we're talking about somebody else, and how you can respond when there's some big controversial thing is, one, you can fight it or deny it or hide out, or you can lean into it. And part of her charm, I honestly think, in third wave feminism, Jennifer Lawrence has a moment where she has a microphone and she makes a really important statement. And she essentially is like, yeah, I have nudes. Everybody has nudes. We have them on our phones. And people were acting like, especially like if this was the 90s, back when people got Lewinsky'd instead of, you wouldn't say that they got Clintoned, right? Like, she was saying, I have nudes. That's okay. This isn't on me. Why aren't we talking about the person who did this and why that's wrong and bad to steal from someone else, especially whenever it comes to their sensitive, and then the websites that are publishing it, etc. And after that, like, the conversation changed about that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I literally remember being like water cooler conversations, people going, oh my gosh, did you know that this star you thought was a sweet Hollywood darling actually has nude photos? And then literally those same folks at the water cooler after her conversation being like, good for her, not letting other people tell her what she can and can't do with her body.
Yeah.
So that is a moment. And then that's what I was thinking of when she goes full nude in this movie. For all I know, I haven't looked into it. For all I know, it's a little CGI, a little pasty.
It could be.
I'm not the body double. I honestly don't know. Yeah. At the end of the day, I kind of don't give a shit. I think
it doesn't matter.
Kind of past that moment where it's like Mr. Skin's like, can you imagine it? Did you know their butt crack showed for 2 inches? Like, can
you believe there used to be a thing, that the whole Mr. Skin thing? Can you believe? No, I know, but it's not as popular as it used. But it was a thing, dude. It was like, oh my god.
Wait, Halle Berry and Swordfish, she did what? Oh, I can't believe it. That's so crazy. Let me go Google it real quick. Like, everyone's just being fucking pervy on their own and pearl clutching in public.
What's the timestamp of that? Oh, Mr. Skin knows.
And the fucking the descriptions and captions are so gross on those things, dude.
Yeah.
Like, just so awful to the humanity of the people involved in, especially when it's like a piece of art and not even intended to be lewd in the first place. Get out of here.
It's nuts.
Like,
it's nuts.
So she has a moment where she's fully naked on the beach, and I think what was fun and funny about it is it was a little bit cringy and it was like a little bit bizarre, but she literally beats the shit
Yeah.
out of teenagers.
Yeah.
And if we're gonna bring it back to the fappening, she has people who are like, "Oh my gosh, you're naked! That's so crazy!" They're running off with her clothes when they're skinny dipping, and she beats the
Yeah.
fucking shit out of them, like
Yeah.
literally, like elbow to the throat, jump kick them, like. It was kind of
Suplexes
funny.
one
And
person, like
yeah,
straight on WWE suplexes a person.
it was a little overwhelming because you're like, holy shit, I just saw Jennifer Lawrence naked. Okay, she's doing that. Good for her. And then we saw her beat the shit out of some
Yeah.
kids. Were they 16? Were they 15? I don't know. I loved it.
Yeah.
Just because of that like anything goes. We don't need to be policing women's bodies, and they are allowed to be. And then meanwhile, you have the poor, literally virginal kid in the water who's just like, yeah, I had a plan. I was going to run out and call my parents. She's like, I took care of it, dude. Don't worry.
Right.
Which is kind of the dynamic throughout the whole movie is this kid's very anxious and nervous and not out of a shell. And her responsibility is to get him out of a shell. And I really like that dynamic. There's a few moments where she's like pressuring him into sex.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, some of the old R-rated comedies, when we're talking like some real weird stuff, especially in the 80s that you may be more familiar with and saw in theaters, some real like, oh yeah, we're peeping on the girls and they're getting in trouble, weird crap. Like,
you mean rape?
Selling
rape was happening and it was hilarious.
And selling them and LOL, that's the punchline of the whole movie. And meanwhile, there's like all sorts of gender and racial dynamics at play and homophobic humor and like all throughout, just like the worst of it. I feel like this movie kept the tone of those, and I'm sure someone's going to have things to say about certain moments or plot points or whatever, certain lines, of course. Overall, I feel like they did a good job where she's pressuring him at points, trying to get him out of his shell and like, come on, snap out of it. You should fuck me now. And then there's a moment near the end where she's doing the opposite. She's actually comforting him and saying, no, it's okay. You don't have to. There's no pressure to do that. And the fact that they struck that tone and that's where they landed on the balance, I think this movie gets away with the tone of those old R-rated comedies, but the actual politics of it, the punchline of the movie isn't the awful, which, like, let's also be real. Humans do bad things, and that happens in movies sometimes, and it doesn't always mean that the director thinks the character is correct. But there are times where if you look at it through a certain lens, the director and the editor and the writer were all going, this is hilarious. This wasn't that movie. This one, actually, I think the politics of it were pretty spot on, and it landed in a safe place while taking risks in getting there. So I think that's part of why it worked and was overall not entirely threatening, felt like it was a little bit risky. And I liked your word refreshing because it reminds me of those movies without actually playing into the worst habits of those movies.
No, absolutely. And again, like at this point, like I don't mind talking spoilers, whatever the case is. But if you watch the trailers, you could tell exactly what's happening. You know, Jennifer Lawrence's character, Maddie, she is in dire straits because one, she inherited a house from her, I believe it's her mom or grandma. I forget which relative it is, but it doesn't matter. She's trying to keep the house. It's in a neighborhood that's being gentrified in Long Island, which a lot of neighborhoods are that way. And again, being in New York and from New York, I've seen these neighborhoods where, you know, people are getting like, you know, pushed out because the richer folk are moving in and making it their own.
As a Long Islander yourself, you definitely could have felt that.
I don't understand why you think I'm from Long Island.
On Long Island.
It's not Long Island. Okay. This, again, you can
Come
tell.
in the comments. If,
Blake is a true New Yorker if he thinks that. Yeah. But
that's so funny. No, the moment I'll point to where they do a little bit of racist humor, but I think the politics land is she goes, yeah, they're trying to push me out of my neighborhood. Like they're coming for what's mine. Do you know what that's like?
Yeah.
And then my understanding based on who was a Native American dude goes,
he's a Native American. Yeah.
Yeah. And she goes, yeah, sorry. Of course you do. So they land on not like, oh, how funny it is that something, or like, oh, this, like, it's a problem with some movies is there's the white privilege. Like when I heard her say that, I was like, really, lady? You're gonna, and then the joke, the actual script writer goes like, yeah, she's kind of a dumbass. She stepped in it,
right.
But we acknowledge that this happens to other people too, even though the star of our movie is a white woman.
Right. I will have to say that joke went over a lot of people's heads in my screening. Like I like it was. I think I was one of two people that laughed at that moment. Like everyone else didn't get it because again, they don't really tell you that he's Native American, but you look at him, he kind of he fits the part,
Let's
right?
just
In
say
a
that
way.
he's not. Let's just say he like because you're right. They don't telegraph it completely.
Yeah.
Whatever he is, we know that he's probably more susceptible to gentrification than Jennifer
Sure.
Lawrence is.
Yeah.
We can do that just by just a quick eye test,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah.
And the way he responds is like, "Yeah, no, I know."
Yeah. Yeah. No, yeah. And again, this character is just somebody who is no fucks given, looks out for herself primarily, because again, they cover that from the very beginning where she basically like sleeps around. She has no commitment, in her. She does what she wants to do. She loses her car because she's behind on payments and stuff like that. And then the reason why she gets into this situation with Percy, the young 18-year-old, 19-year-old, played by Andrew Barth Feldman, who their chemistry was great, by the way. Like the brilliant casting. I think it really worked. Basically she gets into an arrangement with his parents because his parents wants him to break out of his shell before going to college. So she's hired to sleep with him in order for her to get a car that they're offering to give her. So the whole sex worker conversation happens, which it was a nice, funny exchange between the parents and her too. Like I fully support sex workers, and she's like, I'm not a sex worker. like I just need a car, which is like really, really
right? Where
hilarious.
the politics are good of it. They're leaning into the humor of it and the awkwardness of it without being like, oh, gross sex work.
Right.
Like they honestly, the characters are saying it, and also I think the tone of the movie is such they're not making the punchline sex work, and that's smart. Like, but they also get to deal with the awkwardness that the characters feel, and I'm sure there's somebody somewhere having a conversation about like who their daughter is dating, whatever, and it's like, I know we support you,
and why are they dating? Why is she dating him, or like whatever the case is?
Yeah, and that's a whole nother thing that the movie, one of the bigger, riskier things of the movie, which is like a lot of the stuff we're talking about, is duplicitousness, which is another form. Like when we've had big cancel culture conversations and conversations in that light, if you are duplicitous, like let's just say you lie to someone and say that you're a famous baseball player and they sleep with you because of that and you aren't, then like that's fucked up no matter what. Like wherever you put it on the scale of like how criminal it is, like it is absolutely wrong, and don't do that. The movie, I'm glad that before they got to that part, and like I again not trying to like spoil how it actually goes and where the last scene where they're ending up, and the scene before that where he has a moment with her. There's a version of the movie, I think if it's the 80s or 90s version of it, where it's much grosser. And he's waking up in bed the next day and feeling like used, and like his parents set him up with, I don't know what, like, do we want to say rape, sexual assault, duplicitous, like whatever it is, like that would be a pretty gross movie. And I could see an earlier version of the movie where they use that as a punchline. Like, oh, I feel so bad. It's like my mom, but they didn't do that. They actually avoided that also. There's a bit of a tightrope they're walking with this one. And I felt like they pulled that off personally. Maybe not everyone will feel that way. There's some scenes that it makes them harder to watch, but it also, that tension is part of what makes the movie successful in the first place.
Yeah, they knew how to walk that tightrope between what's a bit too much and just enough, and I think the way the movie ended was kind of like a typical R-rated comedy ending, especially with this type of subject matter, but it was executed in a way I was not expecting, because again, like at the end of the day, what you think would have happened based off of the movies you've watched didn't happen. And there was a different kind of reconciliation there, and I will say this, I loved also, it also shows pettiness very well too, because I loved how at one point J Law's character really falls for this dude, because she sees how sweet he is and kind of like how nice of a person he is. And a school friend kind of bumps into him and you could tell like the school friend is like really into him, and she gets full on freaking jealous, man. She's like, yeah, nice of you to stop by. You can leave now, kind of thing like that. And it was
Kyle
just
Mooney's character from
yeah.
SNL. They had some of those moments, and then
Oh yeah, it was so
his
surprising to see him
coworker,
too. Like out of nowhere, I
yeah,
was like,
Kyle Mooneyham or Kyle Mooney.
Kyle
I
Mooney.
loved Kyle Mooney. Thank you. Loved seeing
Yeah,
him. And then his coworker, colleague at the dog adoption
yeah,
center had a very funny moment where they're being petty about the
yeah.
car, but like for good reason.
Right.
That was brilliant.
Yeah.
It did that very well. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it was pretty hilarious. And yeah, again, there's a lot of things to like about this movie, but yeah, at the same time, it's not a perfect movie. It's not one of those where again, if you were to rank like the best R-rated comedies of all time, I wouldn't even put this up there in like the top 10 or whatever. But it's just
Sure.
refreshing, and it was just nice to see it. And there were definitely some moments where the jokes lingered on too long, where they could have ended it. Like the whole rollerblading thing, like,
Yeah.
when she was going up the stairs. Yeah, again, no
Yeah.
spoilers. This is in the trailer. Like they could have cut that earlier, but they just kept going and going. Now, to her credit, she fully was all in on it. She committed, and again, it goes to show you that, like, her range. I think one of the things we're talking about, like her career, it's just boils down to her range. She has amazing range. And I don't think we really truly realize that until seeing a movie like this, because again,
Yeah.
not one of those genres we would have ever expected to see her in, at least in this moment in her career. I feel like maybe this could have been something like 10, 15 years from now. She could have done something like a Jennifer Coolidge kind of thing where, like, okay, I'm much older now. I really don't give a fuck at this point. Let's go nuts, and all that kind of stuff like that. She's deciding to do this really earlier on and is having fun with it. I mean, it looked like she had a blast. It looked like everyone there was having a blast. Even Matthew Broderick with his limited time on screen with this really, really weird long hair, old man long
Beautiful.
hair.
God. Honestly, it's the best I've seen him in a while. I'm not kidding. Something about him doing a daddy thing rather than like trying to be young
Right.
and cute. Like
Right.
part of the problem with Matthew Broderick was he's really he's has had that like little boy thing going on forever.
Right.
So then trying to see him play dad hasn't always worked when they're leaning into the Ferris Bueller. What made him famous then?
Yeah.
I really like this. This is one of my favorite Matthew Broderick performances in a while.
Yeah.
Seriously.
Yeah.
That was
Well,
fun to see.
well, I like the way you said it, like, because he actually played an old person. Like he actually played a dad figure. And again, I feel like they do try to still squeeze him into like the young kind of like, oh, I'm cool kind of, kind of thing like that. Where it is, no, this guy's just a dude. He's like an old dude at this point. Yeah. And especially when he's having the conversations about what he wants his son to experience. Yeah. He's just like, yeah, I want you to date him hard. Like it's just...
They did a lot of innuendo and euphemisms without being gross and overt about it. And like, that's something that, like, I'm thinking Cock Blockers is a movie that does that to a degree, but the parents are like intentionally kind of graphic or grotesque or vice versa. No, honey, I want to talk to you about sex and whatever. This one, they definitely, the tone felt right throughout, and how the people would actually interact without, like, and in some ways it was almost the opposite of some of those older movies. Rather than people being gross, they're almost like going out of their way to be nice and polite.
Right.
And that tension actually led to some comedy too. I'm thinking of the thing, the director of Joker, I wanted to say Todd Fields. It's Todd somebody.
Shoot. Yeah, we're both really good right now.
Todd Phillips.
Todd Phillips. There we go.
Direct Hangover has a quote a couple few years ago where he's like, they don't let us make comedies anymore because apparently nothing's allowed to be funny. Bro, that is incorrect. He's been corrected by many people who are really good comedy writers. So I don't need to get into it. But at the end of the day, you can make jokes about the same thing and just do it differently.
Yeah,
you don't have to make it to where, seriously. And I think this movie, that's part of what it did well, is it was doing similar territory as those old, more controversial R-rated comedies, but the tone was correct throughout it.
Yeah.
And they are still, because like tension is funny. Like what actually makes something funny isn't, at the end of the day, a marginalized person gets dunked on for the enjoyment of the crowd. That's not what actually made those movies funny, even though that was happening in the movies. So yeah, I think I recommend this to basically anybody, unless they're like either overly sensitive or super cinephile folks. But if you just want like a nice little, me and the friends are going to the movie, we're not sure to watch. I'd put it on the list for sure.
Yeah, like if you were like with your boys or with your girls, and you're like, hey, let's have like a fun like whatever good time, girls' night out, whatever the
You already
case
saw
is.
that. I already saw this.
Yeah.
No, that's too scary. No, that's too this. This is a good middle of the road adults going to the movie theaters like it was the early 2000s again.
Seriously, yeah. And again, like we keep harping on it, but it does really feel like a good throwback like that. And again, we don't get that a lot. What did you rate it on Letterboxd?
I have not put it in yet. I literally saw the late showing and like went straight home and crashed afterward.
No!
So we're about to do this in real time, unless you're
IRL,
watching it
baby,
because it's recorded. No hard feelings. Nailed it. First time I've gotten this high.
There you go.
Correct. I'm gonna go with it feels like 3.5, but I'm gonna go and give it a 4 because I was pleasantly surprised by it. It exceeded my expectations a good bit. So that's a pretty friendly rating for me. It's probably a 3.5 for me if I was a little more objective, but I let my biases inform my ratings for movies when like I let expectations play into it and all that. So the fact that I laughed as much as I did and had a fun time and went into it with really low expectations, can't emphasize, like I went into it being like, why are you making me do this, Rene? I literally texted you that on my way to the theater. I was pretty happy about it afterward, especially it was what the doctor ordered last night. Just some like dumb, silly, lighthearted, decent movie, good writing, but fun at the end of the day. That's what I needed.
Yeah, again, I'm happy you saw this movie compared to the other one I just spoke about, because we would have had a whole different type of conversation today.
I might not be here.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'll be doing this solo.
You recognize this
like Blake couldn't make it.
Yeah. No, he's fine. He's just still rocking in the corner.
Right.
What did you give it? I'm gonna guess 3 since you don't do halves.
Yeah. Exactly. Okay. Yeah, I gave it a 3, but I did like
closer
it.
To 3.5 or closer to a 3 if you did halves, which you don't.
Which I don't, and I'm still sticking to that 100%. It definitely closer to 3.5. Definitely closer to 3.5.
I assume as much, but you don't. I'm not trying to even say you would or do.
Nope.
You have a very clear system. You don't.
I'm sticking to my guns. I don't do halves. No, I don't do halves. I'm a very whole, solid type of guy. I don't do halves.
You're a real New York dude. Ain't no half stepping.
Ain't no half stepping. That's it.
As true New Yorkers, I know
that's
you're from
right.
Long Island,
true East Coasters say no, ain't no half stepping. Yeah, but I hearted it because I definitely did like this movie. It's definitely like one of those like good movies. I guess lastly we could close things out, like you're talking about R-rated comedies. What was going back to that time, what was like the funniest R-rated comedy you remember going to, where you had the entire audience just nuts, just like absurdly nuts because of how funny everything was happening? Because I've had several moments like that. Obviously, we don't get that a lot these days anymore because the whole theater going experience just completely has changed. But back then, like 2000s, this was like prime theater going time. Like a lot of people were out in theaters.
So here's part of the problem is I'm going to do a little biography on me.
I think I know where you're going on this one. Yes. Yeah.
One, I was raised super religious, very strict, not allowed to watch R-rated movies. So I literally went to American Pie 3 as my first R-rated movie and had my head down for a lot of it because I believed that I was not supposed to be there. And I was like scared, like if somebody finds out I'm here, I'm in big trouble. My friends peer pressured me. And so that said, then things kind of take a turn. We'll get in a little more bio. Superbad happens right after I'm finishing high school. Like I was right around the same age as the characters in that movie. That might be it. Opening night of that movie where we're just losing our minds. Like, I can't believe I just saw that. I was a freshman in college, but either way, it was like, holy shit, you can do that. And this is like right when I was catching up on all the R-rated movies I'd missed from my younger years and seeing that, like, oh my God. Another one is, and I'm gonna out myself again a little here, Pineapple Express. Now it's legal. Okay. You can talk about it. Back then, whew, your boy was a criminal smoking marijuana. Right after I started, they released Pineapple Express. We had just gotten in Oklahoma a theater that sold food,
Yeah.
And so I had a giant plate of mac and cheese and a giant brownie sundae. And let me tell you, I don't remember if I was laughing because I was having the best munchy time of my life. Theater wasn't very full, but boy, what a time. I don't remember very much of the movie. I remember seeing it a second time being like, wait, that's what the movie was? Had a great time. I can tell you that for sure.
Oh,
I
man.
missed Anchorman in real time. Anchorman 2, saw it in theaters, was not as good.
Yeah.
I'm also thinking like Talladega Nights era. That to me was a sweet spot for me, my friend group. I think I snuck into Zoolander. It wasn't Zoolander. There was another Ben Stiller movie. Tropic Thunder is another one of those where I had a great time.
Yeah, that was a great.
But yeah, that's the era that for me would have been perfect. Going to the movies with some college buddies and just laughing at things we're not supposed to laugh at. That's kind of the era for that for me.
Okay.
Knocked Up was another big one. Knocked Up, I think, was when I was going from high school to college. So like that era.
Right. The
I
Apatow kind of
enjoyed a lot of
era.
the Will Ferrell stuff, but the best of them were on DVD for me.
Yeah.
And then I was seeing the other ones that were tail end Will Ferrell era, the like Blades of Glory stuff. I was seeing those in theater, so not as good. Yeah, Apatow era was my sweet spot for sure.
Yeah.
What about you?
Yeah, that makes sense because of your age and kind of like, I always keep forgetting about how you grew up and where you lived and all that because you being not allowed to see those type of movies, I'm so curious how your reaction would have been seeing some of the classics.
Well, your favorite movie is Porky's. Like, that's what I was thinking. You always talk about how you love that movie.
No, it's Revenge of the Nerds. The first Revenge of the Nerds is the best because
never seen it.
Yeah,
that'll be the bet. Whenever I finally lose something, which I never do, that'll be my payout. Which you still haven't seen the movies I made you see, but you need to make me watch Revenge of the Nerds someday.
Oh my god! If that does happen, I need to be there with you because I need to see your reaction. Because, talk about stuff that doesn't fly anymore. I tell you, like that's definitely that movie.
We're doing vintage movies. I want to let you answer the question fully. Sorry, but I'm just thinking we've talked about doing vintage movies. If someone's listening, still throw it in the comments. What's your favorite R-rated movie, and also like what would you want to hear us talk about? Because that sounds kind of fun.
Yeah,
being an old classic, cult classic, but I haven't seen it before, and we react to it, kind of thing.
Yeah, no, that's and that's something I've been kind of mulling around in my head too. Like we should totally do stuff like that. But as far as like laughed out loud, audience going bananas type of R-rated comedy experiences, I remember seeing Something About Mary. Not even opening weekend. This was like a week prior. And it was one of those like, you're invited to watch this new comedy, blah, 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 with Ben Stiller and Cameron Diaz. And of course, people knew who they were because obviously Ben Stiller was already a name then. And Cameron Diaz, people knew her because of The Mask. And I believe this came out after the first Charlie's Angels. So I think she was already a good name at that point. You can correct me if I'm wrong on that. But we walked in again. I'm
almost certain that is incorrect.
Incorrect?
Okay. So Charlie was 2000. Off memory, Something About Mary is going to be 98.
98.
Damn, your boy's good.
98. Okay.
1998.
Yeah.
How did I know
Gotcha.
that? Wow,
so she's definitely done.
See, movies. I'm not a moron.
Prior to that, then she's definitely done like some like rom-com stuff, like some of like the. I think The
Mask was her debut.
The Mask was the debut, but wasn't that like 96?
I mean, it was 95. If I'm right about this one, then I'm just going to... 94. Okay.
94. Okay. Yeah. So I feel like she's had some stuff in the middle there. But no one knew who the Farrellies were. Like the Farrelly brothers. Yeah. No one knew who they were. My God. And this showing was weird because they showed it on IMAX. Not because it was an IMAX movie, it was because that's the only theater they had available at the time. The Lincoln Center IMAX, and you've been there. So giant theater, and they're showing this movie, not IMAX movie, on an IMAX screen. So it's like it's squared off because it cannot fill the whole screen. So there are moments where you saw the boom mic in a lot of scenes. I'm just like, I can't believe this is happening right now. I feel like we're watching like a screener when it's not. My God, the audience reaction. I never was in tears almost through the whole movie. Like, I've never felt that experience before, just laughing so hard. I was basically in tears the whole time. Like that, the eruption in that movie was just mind blowing. And then another time that I'll never forget was American Pie. Seeing American Pie opening night that weekend. Remember how I like one of my movie theater annoyances is when people run up and down the stairs, because a lot of people don't realize that where our seats are, it's kind of like stadium seating. So they're kind of like metal platforms and it's very easy to vibrate.
Right.
The entire theater was vibrating, not because people were running up and down the stairs.
That's because you were running up and down the stairs.
Because
you were like, oh my God.
I was rolling and bouncing. No.
Wow. That's crazy though.
People were stomping so hard because they were laughing so hard that the entire theater was like vibrating. Like, I just never experienced that before, because again, American Pie wasn't a movie that we really saw before like that back in that time. So I'll never forget those moments. And of course, yeah, seeing Zoolander, seeing Anchorman, seeing, a lot of these classic like R-rated movies.
I was seeing Wedding Crashers too. There's one I forgot to mention earlier. That's
a good one.
Maybe one of my
that was
a
good one too. Yeah.
Where I was going with my brother's friends and like, are we allowed to be here? And then just having a great old time.
Yeah.
With it.
Well, it's interesting to hear that those were like your first R-rated comedies too, because mine that you saw in the theater, my first R-rated comedy that I saw in the theater, and of course,
Katharine Hepburn,
I'm old
era, Cary Grant. You really liked some of those madcap comedies.
Absolutely, no, it was Beverly Hills Cop, the first Beverly Hills Cop.
Ooh, that's a good answer.
Yeah. That was the first R-rated comedy I saw in the theater. And obviously I was not supposed to be there because I was not of age. But, back then, parents would take their kids to whatever. It didn't matter. And wow, what an experience that movie was. That was,
Is this the moment where you talk about seeing E.T. for the first time? Is that what we're about to do?
No, that was a totally different experience. That was like traumatizing. I'm not watching this movie like forever until maybe I was like early 20s, because that's how traumatized I was. No, this was a total opposite experience where I just like, oh man, this is like the best ever, and yeah, it just went downhill from there. But yeah, no, so it's fun to reminisce about this stuff, and yeah, again, would love to hear your thoughts and comments about. First of all, like No Hard Feelings. Is that a movie that you're interested in? Maybe you heard us talking about it, and like, you know what? Maybe I'll give it a shot this weekend, next weekend, whatever the case is. Or is it? I could also see like maybe for a lot of people, this may be a movie that they want to wait for streaming. Well, I'll just wait for streaming. And honestly, that's fine. Yeah, it's not a movie you have to rush out to see.
For a ticket, certain places.
Yeah.
If you're not an A-list Regal whatever member Movie Pass,
exactly.
Person, then maybe wait. If you're not trying to, if you're unless you got a little date night, you're like, I don't know what to see, but maybe you could wait. Honestly, I don't think you miss something. You would miss the audience laughter. So I would also recommend, if you are going to see it sooner, so it's a fuller screen, because I didn't get fully into it. The audience I was in laughed for sure. It wasn't very full. It was maybe like 30 people kind of thing, 20. The people who were there were into it, and I'm usually the loudest laugh. I had competition. Like,
that's great.
And then
that's great.
I looked back to see, like, because there was a group behind me, and I was trying to make sure my like that I like just checking on the just do the little once around.
Mm-hmm.
They were like fully into it, like literally a group of like 4 or 5 people around my age, and like hand on knee, like, which is how I usually will get when I'm really loving a movie. They're like, they were into it. So if you are going to see it, I would say see it by the time this drops, like tonight, tomorrow, the next day kind of thing. A weekend, a good, not like the super late or super early showing. If you are going to see it, because that'll make it, that's the only way it's more enjoyable than seeing it at home. The actual movie itself, you're fine. But getting with a comedy, seeing a comedy by yourself at home, there's times where I don't laugh at all. I go, that was actually really, really funny, and I didn't laugh out loud once. It helps when you've got the folks around you are into it, for sure.
Yeah,
this is that kind of movie.
It's like when you watch stand-up, it's like, it's nice to be in that environment where everyone is in on the joke. Everyone is like out laughing. Like those experiences, again, we don't get them often anymore these days, especially at the movie theater. Like, this is one of those that I'm sure you're going to get that type of reaction. And it's, if you're looking for that, or if you miss that, then this is definitely one to go to the theater for, to experience it all over again. So yeah, let us know your thoughts in the comments. And again, I would love to hear your thoughts on what are your favorite R-rated comedies, or what was the first R-rated comedy that you went to watch in the theater, and how did that go for you? Let us know in the comments. And all that. I know like on Spotify and iTunes, you can't leave comments, or you could leave comments, but we're not allowed to respond to them. But one thing I just found out, and I didn't know this, on Spotify, you can leave voice comments. You could actually record and leave like a voice message for us.
Oh, now I know what I'm going to do for the rest of my day.
Yeah. So do that. I want to see like who's the first to do that outside of Blake. Like I want to see what's going on.
His head again. If you do that,
I'll shave it twice.
I'll keep shaving it until we just get to full.
That's right.
Full skull,
until you just see my skull like shining through. That's it. Yeah, baby. So let's make that happen, folks. But with that being said, that is our episode of Movie Time this week. Thank you so much again for joining us and for tuning in. Before we head on out, Blake, where can people find you online?
You can find me on Letterboxd, last name Wolf, common spelling of all 3 words, last name Wolf, no punctuation, on Letterboxd, where I just gave this movie 4 stars.
Boom, booyah. And as for myself, you can also find me on Letterboxd, LOWKEY.
Outside of the Regal Theater at 11 a.m.
That's right, at Kaufman 19th. Astoria Regal Theater. You can find me there every week when a new movie comes out. And if you're those 2 slobs, please say hello. I definitely want to see you guys for sure, and have you ruin the movie for me every time I go there. But outside of that, you can also find me on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and most importantly, YouTube, Spotify, iTunes under the LOWKEY GEEK or LOWKEY GEEK. Just, look for our faces. You'll find us there. Again, we appreciate your support. If you haven't done so yet, don't forget, follow us on Spotify or iTunes. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Like this video, like this episode. Leave a comment. Hit the notification bell. Share, spread the word. Share the episodes. All that good stuff. We always appreciate it. If you're in a position to further help support the channel and help the channel grow, check out the affiliates that we have in the description of this video or this episode. You may find something awesome for yourself or for a loved one. And by participating, you'll be helping support this channel at no additional cost to you. And for that, we are always very thankful. So with all that being said, I've been Rene. That's been Blake. This has been Movie Time. Until next time, stay cool, stay classy, stay safe. Peace out, y'all. Bye-bye.